Right, 10 really simple ways that you could improve your photography. And if you just remembered a couple of these, it would make a really big difference. Because one of the problems when you start taking photographs, or you just want to improve your photographs, you think, well, where do I start? And there are thousands of videos, hundreds of magazines, tens of thousands of books about how you can do it. But it's the old 80-20 rule, you know. If you do 20% of these things, if you do 2 of these things, they'll improve 80% of your photos. How about that? Any confusing? Let's just get started. So, first things first, when you're taking photographs, one of the really important things is to get things straight. So when you're taking a landscape photo, or, I don't know, a portrait where people are standing there, if there's things in there that you would expect to be straight, like buildings or lampposts or door frames and things like that, take that little bit of extra time just to check with the lens cap off that things are actually straight and not slightly wonky. If they are wonky, you can adjust that in post-processing, dead easy. You know, do it in Picasso, do it in Photoshop, do it in Lightroom. But if you get it right in camera, you'll save so much time. Number 2, this is one of the most important things. If you've got a DSLR, actually, it doesn't matter. If you've got a compact camera, you can do this as well. Take your camera, take the kit lens off, get your telephoto, and put that on. And I guarantee if you shoot all of your people photographs, all of your portraits, all of your grandkids, your children, your spouse, your wife, everything, if you use a telephoto lens, and if you go like that, and you make sure that lens looks like that when you're taking photographs of them, your photos will look better. Because the longer the focal length, the further you have to get away from them to make them, to fit them in the frame, and that means you won't get perspective distortion, and people just look better. The other thing that happens as well is, because you're bringing the background closer relatively, because you're further away, that background, although you might not have noticed it when you're using your wide angle lens, will be slightly blurred. And this brings it closer so it looks even more blurred. So your photos look better. And even for things like wildlife photos, sorry, not wildlife photos, obviously with the wildlife photo you're using this, for landscape photos, urban photos, anything like that, use your zoom lens. You'd be amazed. It forces you to, instead of including everything and ending up with a postcard picture, because we don't really want to take postcard pictures, do you? It forces you to select a part of the scene, the most interesting part, because you simply can't fit the rest in. Your photos will look better that way. Tip number 3. Crouch down or stretch up. In other words, have a view that isn't just standing there and taking your photos, because that's what everybody else is doing. One of the things we strive as photographers is to find that different view, so our photos stand out from the crowd. And simply by crouching down or reaching up, getting to a different viewpoint even, can make a massive difference to the photos. We all know the one, if you're taking pictures of toddlers, small children, you get down on your hands and knees, don't you, to get down to their level, so they're not always looking up like this. They can look you in the eye, they can look the camera in the eye. And that's a great example, because lots of people just look down and take photos. Do it that way. Oh, I've got to go back, haven't I? I've kind of missed it, haven't I? Tip number 2, if you've got a compact camera or a bridge camera where you can't change the lens, just extend it and make sure it's zoomed in before you take those portraits of those people. Okay, so back to number 3. Crouch down or stretch up, or just get to a different viewpoint. Tip number 4. Whenever you take a photo, always take a portrait and a landscape version. Always take one of them, at least, say 1, 2, 1, 2. Okay, and then crouch down, do 1, 2, 1, 2. Because when you're looking through the viewfinder, it's very, very small, and although you might think you've got the best composition for a particular shot, it's not always easy to know. So if you take 2 sort of landscapes and 2 portrait, or at least 1 of each, when you get back home and you look at the photos on your photo screen, you might find your first idea of what would have been the best orientation for a particular photo might be wrong. So give that a go. And another thing, sort of the next tip, which is related to that, is when you are looking through the viewfinder or on the screen at the back of your camera of your subject, Look for distractions. Look round the frame. Now, the reason for this is because when we're looking at something, say a classic example, you're taking a picture of your wife, and she's standing in front of a nice scene. Maybe it's St Paul's Cathedral or something like that. Something behind. Now, you're looking at your gorgeous wife, thinking, "Oh, isn't she beautiful? Doesn't she look great in front of this beautiful building?" You're concentrating on the subject of your photo because that's what you see. That's why you're taking the photo. However, you take the photo, you get home, and you look at it, and you see right behind her, it was several meters, several yards behind her, there was a telephone pole, and it is now coming out the top of her head. Or in the corner, there was a rubbish bin overflowing with rubbish. Now, you didn't see that at the time because you were concentrating on this subject. Because we see subjects, our cameras see distractions. But if you take that extra half a second just to look round the scene on your viewfinder on the back of your camera, or when you've taken the photo, look at it. That will save you so much time. Well, in post-processing, if you're trying to clone that stuff out, which can be a right nightmare. Or the fact you would just say, just take a couple of steps to the left, darling, or I'm going to zoom in a bit, I'm going to change my composition to get rid of that bin. So, that was the next tip. Make sure you look for distractions on the thing. Next tip, simplify your photos using the rule of thirds. So what I mean is, don't try and get everything in. The classic phrase that I always remember is, I try and make my photographs not look like postcards. And less is more. So what you want to do is, when you're taking a picture of something, don't be afraid to zoom in. That's why we use our longer lenses sometimes to crop in that way. And then use the rule of thirds for your composition. So the rule of thirds is very, very simple. So you're looking at this screen now. Imagine, so you've got two lines like that, and two lines like that split it up. And you want your subject on any of the points where those lines intersect. So either there, or there. And then on these lines, you would want, say, I don't know, either there or there, you'd want, say you were doing a landscape, that would be where the horizon was. So let's say it was a simple landscape with a hill kind of going like this, and there was a tree. So the hill would go there, and the tree would go there. Say it was a portrait, say, of me, where it might be interesting to have my eyes, would be there. Like that. Or maybe there. Like that. Because my eyes, and you would tend to have the closer eye on the rule of thirds to do it like that. So simplify like that and think about those rule of thirds. And by using the rule of thirds, often that will simplify your photos anyway. However, although this stops you putting your subject right in the middle, like I am now in this video, so I should really be off to one side, maybe more interesting. If you are going to go symmetrical, make sure it really is dead symmetrical. And then you'll shout about that symmetry. But in order to be symmetrical, again, you've got to simplify it. So you tend to zoom out, try and get rid of those distractions around it. Where this comes from as well is the idea of getting closer. There's a saying, isn't there, from Robert Capa, if your photos aren't good enough, you're not close enough. And that doesn't just have to be in terms of war photos, but any photos as well. Just get closer, crop in. Next time you're flicking through a magazine, look at the adverts, look at the professional photos. What's in them? There's not lots of other stuff. There's the main subject, and normally not little else. Sometimes there might be lots of negative space, like kind of blankish space with a subject in the corner. But a lot of the time, whatever it is will be big in the photos. Look at, especially in magazines like Vogue and late women's magazines, or even GQ men's magazines. Look at how many, where they have the full face of someone and it will be cropped kind of like that. It's right in there. Now, you don't do that by getting really close with your camera. You do it by zooming in, because that's more... it looks a lot more pleasing to the eye as well, to do it that way. Now, remember, you can do this in post-processing as well. And one of the most important things, I think, for people to play around with when they first start taking digital photos and as they go on, is cropping as well. It's so important, because in post-processing with a crop, you can solve a multitude of evils. You can straighten your photo, you can zoom in, you can adjust it so now your subject is on the rule of thirds. It is so important to crop your photos in post-processing. Lots of people say, hey, I don't have to crop. I get it right in camera. In fact, I don't believe in cropping. Rubbish. Crop in post-processing. You will almost automatically make your photos better by cropping in. Because a lot of the time on cameras, you're only seeing 95% of whatever's there anyway. So even if you get close enough, your camera's taking a slightly bigger picture, you're going to have to crop anyway. And that goes for film cameras as well. So crop. Next tip, look at more photos, whether it be in magazines, books, photo magazines. Just look at lots and lots of photos. Go to the bookshop, go to the photography section, learn the masters, if you like. Look through the books of David Bailey, look through the books of Richard Avedon, the famous landscape photos, Ansel Adams, all that sort of stuff. Just look at lots of great photos and you'll start to develop your palette as a photographer. And you'll see the photos. Go to somewhere like 500px, there's lots of great photos on there as well. And you'll see photos that you might want to emulate. And all of this will influence the style of photos you take. You're not going to copy them because you're going to add this little bit of spice from all these different photographers into the way you shoot and the photos that you create. Take more photos. This is so important. Photography, great photos, it's a numbers game. Even the best photographers in the world, they will take hundreds, if not thousands, of photos on a photo shoot to produce one cover shot, say for Vogue magazine. They'll take thousands of photos and they'll be left with one. That funny scene in Austin Powers where he's doing the photo shoot and he's going click, 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 I'm out, click, 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 click. That's what it's all about. If you take more photos, you will get more keepers. It's as simple as that. I'm not talking about having your camera on motor drive on continuous shooting, just going on the same subject. I'm talking about moving around, mixing up the angles, mixing up the light, things like that. But the more times you go out, the more photo shoots you go on, the more times you press that shutter, the better you will get. The most effective thing you can do to improve your photography is only sharing your best work. So no matter how you share your photos, maybe it through Facebook, maybe through Flickr, 500px, emailing them to people, printing them out and giving to them, if you just become a little bit more picky in the photos that you share with everybody, your photos will be better, because I've said before, photos is a numbers game. The more photos you take in different situations, the more keepers you're going to end up with. So if of those keepers, instead of sharing, say, 10 in every 100, you only share 1 in every 100, that'd be a better photo. A hit rate, I would say a really good hit rate, that I would be happy with for good photos. If I got 10 really good photos in 1 year, I would be happy. I've recently done, my best of photos for 2014, and those 10 photos in that, they're not my 10 best ever photos. In fact, some of them aren't that good anyway, so there's probably only 2 or 3 really good ones out of a whole year of shooting. And if you talk to professional photographers, it'd be the same. How many photos would, really good keepers that you would want in your portfolio, how many out of a whole year? It will be a handful. It won't be many at all. And the way that they appear to be such amazing photographers is because they only share, and you only get to see the best stuff. You don't get to see the out of focus stuff that doesn't work, the stuff there's a distraction coming in, because they spend a lot of time either self-editing, and by editing I mean choosing, not actually changing things, or they have editors who will pick their best photos for them. Now we can't do that, but if personally we just make sure that we only show our best stuff, your photos are just going to get better automatically anyway, aren't they? So there we go, my 10 tips to easily improve your photos. And if you just did 1 or 2 or 3 of these things, and I think probably, what's the most important ones? I would say the most important ones are use a long lens. That will automatically just make your photos look better. It just does, especially if you take lots of photos of people. Simplify your photos with the rule of thirds, and only show your best work. If you just do those 3 out of the 10, tomorrow you'll have better photos straight away. That's enough from me. If you like the video, please hit the thumbs up. If you've got any questions, you can email me, scalespeed@gmail.com. Put comments down below. If you really like it, I'd mean so much to me if you subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you again soon.